Thank you for joining me in this video covering project setup and organization. The 4 videos that will follow this one will be quick step-by-step guides that will not include possible scenarios encountered and settings to overcome errors. They are meant to be viewed by those needing a quick reference to setting up their tablet in a hurry. The video you are currently watching is an in-depth training that will cover settings and possible errors to be overcome. Having your project set up and organized correctly from the beginning is important. Improper settings and organization cause the most problems that users face when using total stations, while conversely, having it right from the beginning will set you up for faster layout with less problems. During this video, we will be exploring projects, jobs, and import tabs found under the data palette on the home screen. We will also be accessing the Windows File Explorer at length. Please turn on your tablet and allow the icon software to load and follow along with the video. It is not necessary to turn on your total station for this video. After the software loads, you will be presented with the icon home screen. Before we begin with the icon functions, let's talk about how to access the Windows File Explorer and where your information needs to be stored for icon to recognize it. On the border of your tablet, in the middle at the bottom, you will find a symbol with 4 squares. This opens the Windows Start menu. Depending on your tablet, it will either be a raised button or a flat symbol. The 10-inch tablets with a green border have the raised button. The 7-inch tablets with the yellow border have the flat symbol. If you have the 7-inch tablet, you may not be able to use the Windows Start button if your touchscreen mode isn't set to Touch Pen. Please refer to Video 6, System and Units for instructions on changing your touchscreen mode. After touching this button, you'll be taken to the Start menu, which may look different depending on the tablet you're using. The 7-inch models typically present a black screen with several options, while the 10-inch models typically present you with the startup menu you would see on a computer. With the 7-inch model, click the button that looks like a file folder to access the File Explorer. With the 10-inch model, find the File Explorer button and click it. Note that the File Explorer will open and overlay itself in front of the icon software. It's not necessary to close icon to load data. I will now navigate to my File Explorer on the simulator I'm using for this video. Icon cannot recognize the information you want to load unless the files are placed in the data folder. I would recommend pausing the video and reading the address on my screen should you need to locate the folder. The best practice for ease of access to this folder is to pin it to the Quick Access menu once you've located the file. Some of your tablets may already have this folder pinned because of previous users. You can pin the folder by clicking and dragging it over to the Access menu and releasing it there. There are multiple ways to maintain organization of your project's files. Some users prefer to load all data through use of a USB drive. While this works fine, it creates a problem if the software crashes while you're laying out on an elevated deck if you don't have that USB with you. Then you must stop what you're doing, go find the USB, reload your data, and then go back to your elevated deck to restart your work. The best practice in this case is to leave a copy of your data on the tablet itself within the data folder. If Icon crashes and you lose your data, you will always have a copy available to reload without leaving your work area. It's important to note that you should create a folder within the data folder with the name of your project. For example, I will now create a folder called Concho Commons within the data folder. To do this, I will right-click, hover over New, and select New Folder. On your tablet, press and hold in the white space with either your finger or your stylus and then release. This is the same as right-clicking with a mouse. Within the project folder, you should copy the information you receive into its own folder. Each time you receive information from the office, you should keep that information separated into its appropriate levels folder within your project. I will now copy the information I received and paste it into the correct folder. There are 2 things you should look at every time you receive new information from the office. First, your largest DXF files should always be less than 8,000 kilobytes. At a maximum, the software can function with 12,000 kilobytes, but you will notice it begin to respond slowly. Multiple files larger than that will cause the system to crash or not even open. Second, each file should be distinctly named by the floor they are associated with. Once you have several floors loaded into the software, if they're not distinctly labeled per floor, it will get very confusing as to which files you should have toggled on or off. You will end up with a long list of files that may have similar names. If either of those two things isn't true, email the coordinator who sent you the files and have them fix both items. Standards have been established for the office personnel creating the files, and they have a checklist they should be following. But with the influx of new employees, there are times when someone hasn't been trained on the new standards. Kindly let them know what you need, and they'll take care of it. Now that we have our information structured and organized in the proper folder within Windows File Explorer, let's go back into Icon and create the proper structure there. Closing the File Explorer will return you to Icon. Click Projects under the data palette. In the lower left corner of your screen, click the green plus symbol. You will be presented with the new project creation screen. Please note, before you create a project, make sure you have your unit settings established properly. Please refer to video 6, System and Units, for further instructions on units. At this screen, type in the name of your project and click the green check that appears at the lower right corner of your screen. You are now in your new project. I am using the Icon Simulator software, which does not support the function of project creation, so I will be in the default project for this video. But please note that on your individual projects, you should never be working from the default project. Next, click Jobs under the data palette. At this point, you can create several jobs without importing their respective data. For now, we're creating them as space holders that will receive the information as we receive it. Click the green plus symbol in the lower left corner of your screen and you'll be taken to the job creation page. You only need to type in the name of the job and then click the green checks. I'll go ahead and create the same 3 jobs as I created in the Windows File Explorer, one for control and one each for levels 1 and 2. Each time you create a job and click the green check, you will find yourself in that job. When you are sent back to the home screen, if you look at the top middle of the screen, you'll see the name of the project and job you're currently in. This is important to note, as any data you import or create will belong to the project and job you are currently in when you do so. You can switch from job to job and project to project simply by clicking Project or Job under the data palette and then clicking on a different project or job like this. Let's talk for a moment about the difference between projects and jobs. We're not organizing our information like this arbitrarily. The reason for organizing information in this format is due to the visibility controls the software provides and the way the points and backgrounds are controlled. When we create a job within a project, we're not creating a separate job in the sense of one physical location on the earth separate from another. We're talking about one elevated deck to the next on the same construction project. When we create separate projects, then we are speaking about a separate job in the sense of one physical location separate from another with a different GC and project team. From within the same project, the visibility of each level and its information can be toggled on and off. What that means is that from the second level, I can view information from the first level as an example. So if I wanted to see that my sleeves are all lining up, I can toggle on the visibility of as many floors as I want and see where the sleeves are located. One more example would be my initial setup. I can currently be in the level 2 job to start laying out points and toggle on the visibility of my control lines and control points to complete my setup process. and then toggle them off to clear my map view of extra information to make my layout process simpler. Similarly, I can toggle off the level 2 points to be able to find my control points easier while completing my setup, and then toggle them back on when I'm ready to lay out. While it is true that you could do the same thing by importing all the information to one job within one project, the problem that arises from doing so is the lack of control over your points. When you're laying out, you'll notice that after clicking the Start button, it turns into a Store button. Every time you click the Store button, you create a digital record of where you marked that point. We use this for many reasons, and even some reasons that you may not know about yet. Most layout teams are clicking Store because it creates a colored point over the point that they were laying out, which helps them know which points are remaining for layout and which are complete. This is indeed helpful, but an even more important factor is that these stored points can be extracted from the software and sent back to the office for both as-built processing and quality control purposes. So if the GC ever says that you have laid out points incorrectly, you have a digital copy of your work that can be plotted on a background of the building, proving whether or not you were within tolerance. Also, we can export reports showing the quality of your setup residuals that mathematically prove whether you were set up within tolerance when you laid out those points or not. Exporting will be covered in a future video. For now, let me explain why what I just said is important. If you've laid out 200 points on level 1 and clicked Store for every point you laid out, then went up to several more levels and done the same thing, but every time you did so you were in the same job file, then you would end up with several hundred if not thousands of points overlapping each other. If you were to then try to export those points to send back to the office for processing, you would have no way of separating those points by level, and it would make processing that information virtually impossible. Also, you would find that as you try to lay out the next level's points, you would have difficulty seeing them due to all the previously stored colored points. The second point validating the previously described organization of projects and jobs in the software is user point creation. You as the end user of the software can create points as needed by using the Sketching app. This app will be covered in detail in a future video, but for now I want to explain that when you create a point, it is stored within whichever job you are currently working in when you create it. This is true of the colored points you create when you click Store as well. User-created points, whether created by clicking Store or by using the Sketching app, are the property of whichever job they are created in. To efficiently manage your data and maintain control of your files, separate the floors, levels, and control file from each other by importing them into their respective job files within one project. You can toggle on and off the visibility of anything you want from within one project, but once a point is created in one job, it belongs to that job. You can also load and unload DXFs and CSVs from a project without affecting the stored points you've created in each job. But if you delete the job itself, you will lose all the user-created points in that job unless you first exported a backup copy of those points to the data folder before deleting the job. One reason you may wish to unload DXFs and CSVs as you get further along in a project is the file sizes I mentioned earlier. Once you've completed a level, the concrete has been poured, and you no longer need to see its background, you can unload that data and free up memory in the software for improved performance and responsiveness. I will cover that later in this video. Visibility of data cannot be toggled on and off between projects. Projects are separate from each other. It's important to understand the difference between the Windows File Explorer and the Icon software. The data folder in the Windows File Explorer is the root location where the files must be stored for Icon to recognize that they exist, whereas the project and job organization within Icon itself is meant to help you control the visibility of those files while you're interacting with them. Since we have already copied and pasted the information in the data folder in the Windows File Explorer and created our projects and jobs, we are almost ready to import that information to the jobs. One last thing I need to cover is the definition of the file types you're working with. The reason for doing so is that you understand the settings you should have in place when importing. You'll see the results of incorrect settings once we begin importing files. There are only two types of files you'll be working with, the first of which is the CSV file. CSV stands for comma separated value. What this means is that each part of a point's information is separated by a comma. There are 5 parts of a point's makeup, most of which will be covered in other training, but you should know how it works in order to troubleshoot any issues you might have. The 5 parts are the points ID, northing, easting, elevation, and description, otherwise known as code. The ID is what separates it from other points in lists of hundreds of points. For example, if I say go find lighting box A, you would know which one it is in a list of points such as A, B, C, and so forth. The northing, easting, and elevation are the numerical representation of the location of the points. For example, the corner of the building is 100 feet north, 100 feet east, and 20 feet above us compared to the point of origin. This is the part that will be covered more in the Survey Fundamentals training. The code is the point's description. For example, 3/4 inch power down or 1.5 inch sleeve. The second file type is DXF, which stands for Drawing Exchange Format. To put it in the most basic term, one CAD designer may be working in AutoCAD and another may be working in Revit, and then you as the end user are working with a Panasonic tablet. For all the different software platforms to be able to interpret the same information, a file type was created that can be passed between them all. That is the Drawing Exchange Format, or DXF for short. So, to summarize, a CSV file will only contain points and they will be in a specific order separated by a comma. If you try to import a CSV with any other separator or in any other order, it will not work for you. A DXF file will contain background drawings such as walls, columns, and routing. Now we may begin importing information from the Windows File Explorer to the appropriate jobs and icon. You will begin to visually see everything I just described. The first thing we'll do is make sure we're in the job associated with the files we wish to import. I'll start with Control. Once I'm in the correct job, I'll click Import. Then click the green plus at the lower left corner of the screen. An important note to remember is that you should always use reference data when importing your DXFs. I've seen users selecting background image. The difference is that a background image is just like viewing a picture in the background. You cannot select the lines to use them for point creation or dimensional checks. Reference data allows you to do so. I will click the reference data, and then under Data Source, I will click the word Data to begin navigating to the files I pasted earlier. Next, I'll select the folder associated with the job I'm currently in. As you can see below, the files within that folder appeared in my available list of information to be imported. This method will ensure that only the files associated with the job you're currently working in populate this list. It's important to remember when importing files that you should always check the settings of the file to be imported. To check my CSV settings, I will now click the arrow to the right of the name of my CSV file. Many users make the mistake of clicking the name of the file and then clicking the green check without checking these settings and then receive error messages. Earlier I explained the order of CSV file information. This is being presented to you at the top right of the screen. The easiest way to explain it is that the two rows should match as they do now. To change the order, click an option on the second row and it will fill the first row in the blue highlighted box as such. If you find that your settings have somehow changed, simply click the boxes in the second row in order like this. Once the two rows match, those settings are correct. Now look below to Field Separator. As I described earlier, it must always be a comma. The file is a comma-separated value, or CSV. Click on the symbol to the right to see your options. If this is set to anything else, it will give you an error message when you try to import and will not allow you to import. Here is an example of that. Finally, make sure your distance unit matches your project units. Refer to Video 6, System and Units for further information on your project's unit settings. Typically, you should be working in US feet. Obviously, if you set the distance to meters and you're supposed to be in feet, the points will be spread further apart than they're supposed to. Once your settings are correct, click the green check. At this point, you'll notice the file has changed colors to blue. You have not imported yet. By clicking the green check, you are accepting the settings you chose. We can import multiple files at one time. To do so, let's click the arrow next to our DXF file to check those settings as well. Here, the only thing I'm checking is that the distance unit is set to feet, and if there are block options, that they are set to explode. Once I'm happy with my settings, I'll click the green check. Now both files are blue, letting me know that they are the files to be imported and the settings are accepted. Clicking the green check now will import the files to Icon. I receive a notification telling me the import was successful. I'll click OK. I'm taken back to the screen where I can import more files. I'll click Home in the lower left of the screen. Click Jobs to change to Level 1, because remember, we need to be in the job associated with the files we're importing. Click Level 1, and when I'm taken to the home screen, I'll click Import. Now I will repeat the process I just used for importing the control files. Click on the green plus, Reference Data, go to Data Source, navigate to the project, and then navigate to the job you want to import. Check your file settings. With CSVs, once you've checked the first file and know that it is correct, you may select the remaining files. Here is an example of block options for a DXF. It needs to be set to explode. And then click the green check. Now I'll repeat the process one more time for level 2. This time I won't speak the steps, I'll just go through the motions so you have a chance to see it done quickly. Now let's quickly look at the results. We're in level 2 job, so we'll click layout points. We are looking at the level 2 background with its associated points. I'll quickly show you how to view other job information, but this will be covered in detail in a future training video. I'll click the Layer Manager button in the lower right corner of the screen. By scrolling up and down, you'll see that all the information you imported is present. It is separated by reference model, which is your CSVs, your DXFs, and then your jobs. Let's turn on the control lines and control points as if I'm going to execute a setup procedure. I'll scroll to the Control DXF and CSV to toggle them on. Now my control lines and points are on in the background. By using this method, I've created a scenario for training purposes by importing my control point CSV as reference data so that I can show you what to do when you want to change how you imported information. Also, how to unload information. Control point CSVs should always be imported as control files. This causes the points to appear as triangles on your screen instead of circles and makes them stand out from the other points. I'd also like to note that your control DXF and CSV only need to be imported one time, and they should be imported into their own job. You will be able to toggle them on and off from within any other job when you need to see them. I'm going to repeat the import process, but this time only for the control point CSV. This time, instead of clicking reference data, I will select control files. This is where control files is located. After importing, click Home, Layout Points, and now your control points stand out clearly. If you still have too many level 2 points in the way and you're having trouble seeing your control, return to the Layer Manager, scroll to level 2 CSVs, and toggle them all off. Click the green check to return to the map view, and now all you see is your control lines, level 2 background, and your control points. You can execute your setup, then toggle off control, and toggle level 2 CSVs back on to begin laying out points. The last thing to explain is file deletion. This is the unloading I was talking about earlier. For example, just now when I re-imported the control CSV as a control file, it didn't overwrite the control CSV that was imported as reference data. For example, let's go to the control job, and from within layout points, if I zoom in and click a control point, you'll notice that there are 2 points in the same location but with different symbols. Points that are loaded as reference data have circles as their symbols, and control points have triangles. I want to remove the redundant points by unloading the control point CSV I imported as reference data. This time when I go to import, I'll choose the red X. Scrolling down on the right side of the screen will show me all the information currently loaded in Icon. The information is separated between file types. I'll scroll back up to my CSVs, select control points to be deleted, and after it turns blue indicating it is the file to be deleted, I'll click the green check. Please note that I did not delete the control job. I only unloaded the reference data. This means that any points I may have created or stored excuse me. This means that any points I may have created or stored in the control job itself will remain safely in the file as backup evidence of work that I've done in the field. Now if I return to the map view and click on a control point, there are not two points in the same location, so it selects the only point existing there. The same deletion process can be used to unload DXF files. This will remove them from the map view, but will not affect the job itself or the points you've stored or created during your fieldwork. This concludes the video covering project setup and organization. These are the proper procedures for file management and organization. Following these steps will make you faster and more effective and reduce the common error messages field users are encountering. Thank you for your time and attention. The following 4 videos in this series will be short introductions to the project, job, and import tabs and the Windows File Explorer, meant to be refresher training. If you have watched and understood this video, you may skip the next 4.